Hey everyone, Psychoriasin here, and today I'm doing a speed painting while talking with Flavia and bobmeatbag.
Prepositions.
Oh, because I said joined
with
by before.
Yeah.
And that's right. I shouldn't say joined with.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you're unfamiliar with the format of the speed paintings or speed sketches, usually I just draw random stuff in the background and talk about a topic completely unrelated. And today what I thought I would talk about is our last Psychological Problems podcast, episode 4. And we brought up some topics that afterward, it seems, got misinterpreted by some people. So I thought I would tackle that because this isn't the first time it's happened, and it's probably because I'm not great at communication, or else it could be that I don't know, something is just unclear. And what I found is some people who contacted me let me know that they were wondering if it was okay to study because I said, not to study. And that's not what I said. So I thought we'd clarify. So the first thing is, of course it's fine to study. I have nothing against studying. I have nothing against learning the fundamentals. In fact, I believe I said mileage is the first fundamental, and it's very important to get that. And then I talked about how it's very important to study after you discover a problem rather than before. And what I think I'm talking about is some people get very wrapped up in studying, period. Like, I need to study to get good at art. And they sort of forget why they're doing things in the first place. They might study, perspective and architecture and anatomy and animals and this and that. And they don't really remember most of it, but it's just an act of studying because that's important. And very often it's cases of people saying things like, I want to be a comic book artist, but they're not actually drawing comics. And it's, I'll draw it after a certain amount of time. But the problem with that is you don't really improve in the things you need to improve on. But if you were to just start drawing a comic, you would pretty soon be tackling specific issues that you could then solve. So it's very important to study, but it's important to study in something that's related to what you want to do. And in order to know what you want to do, it's important to have that first. And for people who aren't that sure, drawing a lot can reveal to you what it is you want to do with your art.
Another thing that I was just thinking of is that for people who just mindlessly study, they don't really encounter specific problems that they might be missing. So if they just buy and said, they're just going to do perspective stuff, and it's just like, okay, they just try to find whatever perspective thing that they can do, and that doesn't really tackle how their brain might work. If they go after something specific, they will end up hitting specific walls specific to their brain, specific to how their brains interpret information, or et cetera, that kind of stuff. And then by being specific, you tackle specific weaknesses. So you can't just study for no reason, because you're not going to find the specific weaknesses that you have.
Yeah. So, sorry. I thought we could address one comment in particular, because this is something that really, I think, we should address. So it was a comment by Everyday Bodybuilding, and
okay, I guess I will be reading Everyday Bodybuilding's comments. Okay, so I don't know. Gonna not listen to this advice personally. Art Center, CDA, Brainstorm, and every other school teaches it the reverse way. You learn visual library and technical fundamentals, and then you apply it to design. It's nice to say all this stuff, and it would be wonderful if we could just bang our head into the wall making cool stuff. But it's just not practical. You don't know what even makes anything cool. You have no library. You will just kill your self-esteem and make no progress. You see people drawing on their own all the time. They do crappy anime for years and years and never get anywhere. The idea of inquiry in art is idealistic. You can't stop mid-design and go train yourself on arm anatomy. Arm anatomy isn't a fleeting topic. You can't pause a design and train the wealth of things you don't know when all these things take hundreds of hours to master. I think inquiry learning has its place as a supplement, and you need to focus on fundamentals first. If you aren't improving, you don't really want it, and you're just lying to yourself, in my opinion.
All right, so
I take issue with this. I take issue
let's
with.
go through each part.
Yeah, like first of all, okay, you're not going to listen to this advice personally. Okay, but then you go on and mention Art Center, CDA, Brainstorm, and every other school which teaches it the reverse way, and you mentioned these schools as a counterpoint to what we were saying. However, when you go to Art Center and you mention the entertainment design department of Art Center, it's like you're already focusing your acquisition of knowledge. You are already on a path. You are already on a goal. Your learning is already goal-oriented because it will make you learn the fundamentals required for entertainment design, which is exactly what we were saying. However, it's like you go into this frame, which is exactly what we were stressing before. Focus and direct your learning. Not, I don't know, just do your own thing without any goal in mind and without any studying. It's like, no, you're studying, but you're studying it in a structured and organized way.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that keeps popping up these days is probably because of YouTube. I would say this is probably the cause of it. But it's this huge obsession with concept art as the be-all, end-all, or end-all, be-all of art, as if that's all art is. So you said Art Center, and you specified entertainment design, CDA, Brainstorm, Fengzhou School. These are all concept art schools. Like, not art. Obviously, Art Center has many departments, but they're all geared towards jobs in a certain industry. This isn't art. This is a section of art. So, for instance, if you started drawing, right, or painting, and you're like, you really enjoy epic scenes, and that's what you want to do. You watch movies, and you see the matte paintings in the background. It's like, wow, that's what I really want to do. I want to be part of that industry. That's already because you were focusing on what you want. So now you know what you want, and then you'll find a school that gives you training in what you want, which in this case is entertainment design or concept art. But that's not everything. You wouldn't go to Gobelin, for instance, which is a world-renowned animation school, to learn the same things that you would go to Fengzhou School to learn. They're completely different, but they're both teaching art. Or you wouldn't go to the Repin School to learn concept design. It's like, no, you learn how to paint. You wouldn't go to an atelier to learn animation, right? Yeah. Like, they're very, very different things.
Even the act of choosing which school you go to is already focusing your knowledge.
Yeah. And when you say things like, oh, but with the fundamentals, you can draw everything, you're missing some fundamentals. Because something I've noticed across the board with concept artists is they have pretty bad gesture. They wouldn't really do well unless they were, studying gesture. Because I'm not saying they can't learn it. I'm not saying, oh yeah, you're a concept artist, you can't learn. But they lack gesture in their work. They lack a lot of expression. A lot of, they have certain thinking that is suited to a certain industry, right? So, gesture is also a fundamental, but so is understanding perspective in extreme detail would be very useful for certain industries and not that useful for other industries. A character designer does not need to know extreme perspective, like how to do something where they design a room and they can lay it out so everything is appropriately scaled. That's a good thing to know. Sure, it's not bad to know that. It's also not bad to play the violin really well. But what does that have to do with what you want to do if you just want to be a character designer, if that's what you enjoy? So the issue here is when someone who may want to be a character designer spends their time doing studies of things that aren't going to help them become a character designer. Now, you brought up another topic of you don't know what even makes anything cool. You have no library. You just kill your Steam and make no progress. Do you want to tackle this?
I don't know. I think it's when you say you don't know what even makes anything cool is... Oh, boy. That's a lot. Like, if you don't know what makes anything cool, if that's truly the case, then you are not really doing art. Like, where's your... You have to have some innate sense of coolness. You have to have some innate sense of aesthetics. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing art.
Or if not coolness, at least something you want to say.
I think what he meant was you don't know what makes anything effective, like an effective design, effective problem solving, because he's only really talking about concept art and character design and this whole problem solving oriented approach. However, another thing I take issue with is when he compares... Okay, so first of all, the idea of inquiry in art is idealistic. That's such a general statement. And if this were true, there would be no fine art, there would be no expressive art, there would be probably no animation, or so many branches would disappear. And then, you see people doing this for ages, and then they draw crappy anime pictures. Like, you're really comparing apples to airplanes. It's not even apples to oranges. It's such a different... And okay, so you see people doing art their own way, and they just do crappy anime. Sure, fine. But you see people doing concept art for years on their own, and they do crappy concept art for years. This is not about what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's about the type of mind, a frame of mind that you have, which is a given. You would be, I don't know, a chef, and you would be doing absolutely the same thing if you have this mindset.
Yeah. You also said some things like learning accurate arm anatomy will make you a better concept artist and illustrator. 110% not true. There are plenty of illustrators who have a very whimsical style. Consider artists who do like newspaper comics, a guy who does Simon's Cat. There's plenty of illustrators who don't need to know arm anatomy.
Yeah,
they do rubber tube arm drawings. It's like you're thinking of Illustrator and you're thinking of Magic the Gathering or these types of things that are drawing realistic things. Your view of an artist is very, very limited, it seems, because you do mention that, you know, every top concept art program. It's like, that's not what we were talking about. We weren't talking about concept art. We were talking about art. This is much, much bigger than concept art.
Yeah. I think you might have misunderstood our point. Like, you're thinking about it in a very... in your own industry frame of mind. Yeah. And sure, there must be different priorities in every industry, and there might be different settings and different, I don't know, hierarchies of fundamentals. However, in general, for a person who has a brain and who is going to express that, whatever's in his brain, through art, there are, I don't know, basics.
Yeah. And this idea that someone who does know the fundamentals doesn't have a crappy portfolio, I think that's an issue with eyes, because that's not true. I've seen professionals who are very, very good, and I look at their work, and it's very boring. It's very stiff. There's really virtually no appeal, but they have their fundamentals down. That's not all art is about. Art is not about fundamentals. Art is about communication. Yeah, fundamentals facilitate communication.
Yeah, because I think, again, he's only talking about it in terms of a crappy, like, before any noun, crappy concept art portfolio, crappy concept art something. Sure.
But even then, there are differences between concept artists who draw stuff that's, like, really interesting and novel, and concept artists who are sort of one in a million and... one in a group of a million, not one out of a million, but there's just common. It's, here's another epic landscape, dragons in the background, breathing fire, or here's another magic card illustration with an elf with her arrow, or a goddess with wings, or a beast. It's like, this is very much Dungeons and Dragons, as if Dungeons and Dragons is a whole world.
Yeah, because if you were to judge by this, Yoshitaka Amano would not make the cut.
There's no Amano. There's no Leyendecker. Because Leyendecker didn't do this. Norman Rockwell didn't do this. Well, he didn't do his epic fantasy stuff. He hasn't done mechs.
He didn't study mechs.
Yeah.
Sargent didn't draw from imagination, so what does that make him? You know, is he not a good artist because he didn't draw from imagination? Oh, and you could say, he knows his fundamentals, but he doesn't know perspective that well, which is probably the case, that his perspective isn't as great as someone who's trained to be an architect. Yeah. However, he had the skills necessary to do what he wanted to do. And that would be the same for anyone. Matt Groening drawing The Simpsons for the first time. It's like, he knows he has a certain amount that he needs to do what he wants to do. You don't need everything. And to think that you need everything, I think, is underestimating how many things there are. Yeah. It's as if you could learn everything and be atop everything. Craig Mullins, great artist, one of my favorite artists of all time, definitely one of the greatest artists alive in our generation. He doesn't draw anime well. I've seen him try to draw anime. It's really bad. It's like, you don't understand this. Yeah. But that's not to take away from anything that he does. What he does is great, but he is not an anime artist. And to also say, crappy anime, it's like, sure, there's plenty of crappy anime. There's plenty of crappy concept art.
Yeah.
There's plenty of crappy everything. You could go to a crappy Italian restaurant, a crappy Japanese restaurant. Doesn't mean that there's no good Italian restaurants or no good Japanese restaurants. It just means you have experienced something that is pretty low standard. Because when it comes to really top-notch mangaka, look at their perspective. Like, there's artists that have... Kim Jung-gi draws comics. Are you going to say his perspective sucks? Yeah. But his perspective is not formal. Mm-hmm. It's not that he learned formal perspective. He observed from a very young age that things fit within a box, and then he interpreted it based a lot on his intuition. Yeah.
With all the good people that aren't just a common thing, like they're not just like the common tool to be used or just thrown away. It's always not just their fundamentals, but something else. Yeah. Kim Jung-gi, it's his freedom. Like, I would say, he's very technically minded, but he's not stiff. He creates things in a way that's like, you are not restricted by the fundamentals. Yeah. You have mastery over fundamentals, and you do interesting things within, and the fundamentals are there as a tool. Yeah. That is not what makes him a good artist. That's not what makes him impressive. It's his imagination. And with all the other artists that Stryker mentioned, it's just like, with Craig Mullins, it's like he has excellent taste in creating really appealing images. So it's like, that's appeal. Are you going to say that that's like, that's not important? Are you going to say that that's not like a good fundamental or something? There's just so many more aspects. Even with the cartoony characters, using tubes and not real anatomy. You're getting into shape language. You're getting away with how far can you push something and it can still read as something human, something identifiable, without it being perfectly a human arm or something like that. It's fundamentals in a way can be standards, but you can't use them as the end all and be all of something to measure what's good or not. It's just not all that there is. The human mind is capable of more than just 3 dimensions or anatomy or whatever it is needed for whatever job that is required.
Yeah. And there are things that are seemingly transcending fundamentals because they're things people didn't think about, like anatomy, or like appeal, for instance, not anatomy. Yeah. But Like the artist Freddie Moore, he's a Disney animator, and he created a lot of the appeal in Disney's work. Because before they had this very rubber tube thing, and he really brought straights against curves into practice using more bean-like shapes. From there, you have Glenn Keane, who took that further. Now, which of your fundamentals that you would list, that you would study at a school, one of the concept art schools, would teach you this?
Dun, dun, dun.
You don't get one, which is why... I guess for me, in search, because I suppose I would have agreed with you, or this way of thinking, this very limited vision, perhaps I would have agreed with it at some point. But I originally studied to be a fine artist, and then a caricaturist, and then an animator, and then an illustrator, while I looked at a lot of concept art. And I really have a high appreciation for anime, so... I've got a different view of things. It seems like it's much broader than your view in terms of everything is concept art. But even if you look at the artists who go to these schools, even within that group, look further and you will see the same thread. I have interviewed many artists, and they talk about similar things. For instance, starting out drawing Dragon Ball. You know, so many concept artists do this. Every artist, especially if they're guys anyway, a lot of them started out with Dragon Ball. A lot of girls started out with Sailor Moon. It's not, or nowadays with Pokemon, it's not an uncommon thing to start with that. That doesn't mean you stay on that. It's that, yeah, you start drawing this because you like it, and then you find out more things you like, and you pursue those, and maybe your tastes develop. But even with Feng Zhu, when he was drawing a lot in the beginning, and he had obviously a taste for Star Wars stuff. Because I remember when, I guess this is one of the virtues of being old, but I remember when Feng Zhu was posting his work on forums, and I remember his portfolio, the original portfolio, when he was drawing like a bunch of Star Wars things. He didn't have all the painted stuff yet, and it's just like, yeah, you have taste, but and you're good, but you're not perfect. There are plenty of artists that were better, and then you could say, oh, but he didn't have fundamentals then. It's like, no, he had what he wanted to do what he wanted, and as he progressed, he gained more and more fundamentals. It's not like he learned everything all right away and then became good. And I think this is something that's really creating this conveyor belt education system, where people aren't figuring out what they want to do, developing themselves. Instead, it's learn the fundamentals so you can be a concept artist, because concept art is all there is. It's as if this is the whole world, because, yeah, right now, concept art is really big. But in the 1990s, in the early 90s, 2D animation was big. You know, if you were a 2D animator, hey, you would have a job. And then what happened?
3D.
Yeah, like, just because something is big and it's current, it doesn't mean it's everything. Now, you could talk about Loomis and how he teaches fundamentals, and mostly, yeah, you know, Loomis teaches most of the fundamentals, but he doesn't teach painting the way Richard Schmidt does. So there's that missing. He also doesn't teach a lot in terms of simplification towards anime, for instance. But that is a thing. There is reasoning behind that. So I do think it's good. It's good to learn your fundamentals, but it also can be detrimental when you learn fundamentals without any reason or any idea of what you want to do.
I noticed this. You mentioned how Feng Zhu, he already had a taste in his work even before learning the fundamentals. He had an idea of what he wanted, right?
Well, he had a good portfolio because he drew a lot, and then he got accepted to Art Center at a very young age. So how did he get accepted to Art Center before knowing fundamentals? Because Art Center teaches fundamentals. How would he have a good portfolio? Where did that come from?
Yeah. There's something inherent with a lot of artists, especially the ones that eventually become really good. It's like they already have some sort of sense, whether it's in Fang Zhu's case, it would be design. I guess for me, it was like, even before I started gaining skills, Cycra saw screaming faces.
Yeah.
It's just like, that was already there. That was already before I learned any fundamentals. So when you say this, it's like, oh, if you don't have fundamentals, you don't know what cool even is. Well, it's like, no, human beings already have an inherent taste. Certain things stand out to them more. Some people have a better taste in coolness. Some have better taste in expressions. In my case, the expressions were screaming faces. There's already something there. And when you say to just learn fundamentals, because I went through this. I went through this when I just tried to learn skills. And there is a cost in everything. You deaden yourself, especially if you're aimless, especially if you pursue something without direction, I suppose. It's just like you're going after cold fundamentals. You're just going after something that's... I keep saying this. It's aimless. It's cold. But that's sort of what it is. It kind of makes your work stiff. And you might gain control, but you lose a little bit of your soul. And you will lose a lot, especially if you're not aware. Because if you're aware, you can control how much you lose. And then you can eventually gain it back. But if you just go after fundamentals purely without any direction, it becomes harder to, I don't know, reclaim that part of yourself. Yeah,
it's a little bit like studying the dictionary.
Yeah.
Because you want to be a writer.
Yeah.
So, you learn every word. It's like, do you need every word to be a good writer? And what are you accomplishing by not writing?
Yeah.
And so there's another comment from a guy who said, I guess he was defending our point. He was saying, I think what they were saying was draw what you want and let that guide you to whichever fundamentals you need to learn. Yeah, that's what we were saying. And I see it as sort of like, don't be afraid to doodle in the margins of your algebra notes. Drawing for fun and drawing to study are different, in that one should be loose and carefree, while the other is where you actually draw with an intent to learn something. I don't really agree with this. And even calling it doodling, like, I don't get it. I don't get how art making is doodling. Maybe it's just semantics here, where we're saying something that's getting misconstrued. But to me, I think creating art is not just the same as I'm bored, so I'm drawing in the margins. You know, it may be that what you draw when you're bored is something interesting, and so you doodle and I find out this. But when I draw without studying classical fundamentals all the time, I'm really learning how to draw intuitively, and that's not something that I would say is doodling, because there's a lot of thought that goes into it, a lot of experimentation, a lot of figuring out what is appealing and why. When you get stuck in any of these things, it seems to be like, whether it is, because you're right that there are certain artists who draw crappy anime drawing and nothing else. But look at an artist like Cintiq, who he himself said he started drawing crappy anime and then he moved on beyond that. He didn't attend a school, so, there's that for you. But if you just draw crappy anime and you never improve, what does that really say? I think it says you're not really thinking about what you want, or you're not holding yourself accountable. You're not holding yourself to a high standard, because then you would really analyze. You would think about things. Why do I like this? What do I really want to say? What am I doing and why am I doing it? What are my motives? What is the point behind everything I'm doing? And with what you're talking about with concept art and learning fundamentals, I would say the same thing. Why? What is the point? And it's okay. Anything is okay, so long as you know why you're doing it. So long as you understand, oh, this is why I want to do this. This is my direction. This is my goal. This is why it's so important to learn these fundamentals. Perhaps it is because I want to be a concept artist. I want to be like this artist. And I've read that it's important to learn these. The other thing with being old is you actually get to see older. Whatever. Oldish. Old compared to some of my audience. How about that?
Okay.
Anyway, what you get to see is people who have gone through that, you know, people who have gone through, learn fundamentals and just fundamentals. They've come out as craftsmen. They can draw a thing. Not really what they want. They haven't really spent much time figuring out what they want. But they can do the thing that's necessary. And they can get a job. And the job is often, we need you to draw someone else's style. Or we need you to just draw like this in a very generic thing. It's like, okay, do that for a while. Do that for a few years and see how much you want to continue. There's a lot of people who get really depressed after drawing. Oh, I learned fundamentals because I just wanted to draw. It's like, no, you didn't just want to draw. People don't start out just wanting to draw. They start out wanting to draw something. And then there's this, oh, drawing would be cool and drawing is hard and I just want to learn how to draw. That comes after, where it turns into, I just wish I could draw this. I wish I had the skill. When you finally get the skill, you're now just a craftsman. You just have a bunch of tools. You're not an artist yet. You're not saying something. You're just, I can do a specific job. But after a while, that job becomes very similar to any other job out there. You wake up, you do a thing for an employer who has expectations, you go through it, submit the work, you get revisions, you fix it, and if it's just fundamentals, like maybe a lot of it is because I had some negative experiences, maybe because I didn't learn fundamentals enough, maybe I didn't go to art center, and that's why I'm missing things. But there is a dark side to just learning fundamentals and thinking that's enough. And then worrying about, well, what do I actually want to draw? Because oftentimes, if you don't think of what you want to do first, and you think of fundamentals entirely like, I'm going to learn anatomy and perspective and proportion and this and whatever, it's like, okay, you do that, you get the job, and then that eats up all your time, and then what? After a couple of years, you think you can just decide, well, I'm going to do what I want now. It's like, you better have savings then, because this is going to take time.
Yeah.
And it's not that you can't do it. Plenty of artists do it. But it takes time. It definitely is something that, okay, now you have to think about what you really want. And sometimes it means, oh, I didn't need all these fundamentals. I just needed more time to devote to myself and what I wanted.
Yeah, just think about, you're putting all this energy into fundamentals and you get your job, and then you're putting all this mental energy and mental space into doing this job and dealing with revisions and all this stuff. And it's like, by the time you actually want to do something, it's like, oh, you could have spent all these years making your brain more adapted to finding out what you want to do. And then it's like, by the time you actually do it, it's like, oh, you have this extra baggage that you need to get rid of as well. It's like, there's a cost to everything, you know? It's just like, okay, you explore yourself first. You might not work on the fundamentals as much, but what do you gain? You gain an identity. You gain what it means to be an artist. You gain a soul. You gain the thing that will distinguish you from any other craftsman, from becoming just a tool.
If that's what you want. And
yeah, if that's what you want.
Some people don't want that, and they would rather, you know, I just want an art job. I just like being in the industry. I like being around these things. Cool. That means you know what you want. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what we're saying, is figure out what you want. Because some people go into it thinking, I don't really know what I want to draw. I think I want to be an artist. I think that sounds good. I would like to do that. And then they proceed to make pretty big decisions in life to lead towards that. Like, okay, I guess I've got to go to school. I guess I've got to learn the fundamentals. And some of the freest artists I know are artists who, not ironically, but they happen to be programmers who do art on the side. Mm-hmm. Because art is not something they need to make money off, and so their art is very free. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I make my money doing programming, and then I draw whatever I want. I don't have an employer telling me what I should or shouldn't do. And I think that's also part of understanding yourself. They understand. I would not like to have art become something that I have to do for someone else. I just want to draw what I want. And for them, that's a very good compromise. For someone else, it might be, I am a programmer. I hate being a programmer. I just want to be an artist. I would kill to be an artist and just do art. Any kind of art. Even if I get paid very little, I don't care. I just want to do that. And then it's like, okay, that's a different philosophy. But they're both philosophies that are discovered from figuring out who you are.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is that the consideration comes... Because, like, if you're just aimless, then your role will be aimless, and you will always be going down the aimless path. But if you have some consideration, you will have agency. You will be able to make more decisions than whatever it is you think you made. You know, and I think that's important, even if you want to be a designer. Because even if you want to be a designer, you need to know what it is that you're going to be designing, what it is you're going to be good at. You know, you can't just go with fundamentals and think, I'm just going to design stuff. What are you going to design? Are you just going to design anatomy? No, you need to, there has to be more. And especially if you want to be a really good one. Because all the really good ones, it's like they have a specific taste. They have something more than just, I'm just a random concept artist to do generic work. No, they have something that distinguishes them. Yeah.
I just had one point that referred to something you mentioned, that, oh, I just wanted to draw when I was a kid. That's a pretty narrow-minded point of view that people have when they look at why they were doing things as a child, because it's never that simple. At the time, was your mind of a child. You were just thinking, oh, I just want to draw. But as an adult, looking back on it, you drew because you were lonely. You drew because you wanted power. You drew because you wanted to see pretty girls. You drew because you wanted to design another world to escape into. There's much more motive behind what you do and what you draw as a child than, yeah, I just drew. Yeah, I was just drawing. Yeah, I don't know. And as you grow up, leaving this unexamined leads you to not knowing why you shouldn't go to this school, or why you would like to go to this other school, or why you wouldn't want to go to a school at all. It will just make it easier for you to get derailed and distracted and pursuing a path that is not your own.
Yeah. And it's a lot of deciding what school even. Like, if you have decided, I want to go into art, it's like, what school? Why? What do you want to learn? What do you really want to do? Because there's a lot of people who, I don't want to say throw away their lives, but invest a great deal into these types of schools, or sometimes they just invest in the idea of, I want to be an artist, but they don't really want to be an artist. And this is really sad to see as well, because I've seen a lot of these cases too, where someone will say, oh, I want to be an artist, but they don't really put in the work. They're more interested in playing video games. Like, do you really want to be an artist? Or is this just something that sounds cool to you?
Oh,
do you like the idea of being an artist? Do you think like, oh yeah, you know what? Art's a lot more fun than accounting, so I'm going to be an artist because, hey, I get more prestige, I get fans, I can still have as much money as an accountant, but I'm going to be an artist because that sounds fun and that sounds easier, and then I'll be cool and I can dress however I want, and it's like, okay, well, that's something, but I don't know how good of a reason that is to pursue art. But anyway, in the end, this is just our opinion. I do hope we clarified some things, though. Hope, you are not going to think, Sakura is saying don't learn fundamentals and don't study, because that's not at all what I'm saying at all.
We are not saying that.
And even when I say just draw and figure out what you want, that's only the first part. Step one, draw a lot. Draw a lot. Draw. If you haven't been drawing your whole life, and this is something that, you're in your mid-20s and you realize, I want to be an artist, but I haven't drawn a lot. It's like, well, then you've got some catching up to do. Friend? You're going to have to draw. All right, so that's it from me. Thanks, Flavia and bobmeatbag, for joining me again. I'm so self-conscious about
the joining, the merging is complete.
We are one.
All right. I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.